Fuller returned to Los Angeles the way storms return to a coastline that once believed itself safe, without warning, without apology, and with a force that reshaped the emotional landscape before anyone could prepare for it. For years, her absence had become a convenient silence, a chapter people believed was closed simply because it was no longer discussed. Yet Quinn had never truly disappeared. She had only withdrawn, carrying with her unfinished business, unresolved wounds, and a secret that grew heavier with every passing year. When she stepped back into the city, she did not come alone. At her side was a child whose very existence threatened to fracture the delicate balance of power that had defined the ongoing war between the Logan and Forrester families. The timing of her return was not accidental, nor was it impulsive. It was calculated, deliberate, and devastating in its precision. The child was young, quiet, observant in a way that suggested an awareness far beyond innocence. Quinn did not immediately offer explanations, but she did not need to. The resemblance was undeniable. In the set of the jaw, the thoughtful eyes, the subtle gravity that mirrored a man whose influence had shaped an empire. The truth announced itself long before it was spoken. This child was Eric Forrester's. Conceived during the final, chaotic chapter of Quinn and Eric's entanglement, born in secrecy after Quinn left town, and raised away from the relentless scrutiny of Los Angeles. The child embodied everything unfinished between them. Quinn had protected that life fiercely, shielding it from the war of egos, alliances, and betrayals that defined the world she had fled. But protection had its limits, and silence, she had learned, was no longer enough. Eric's reaction to Quinn's return was not immediate anger, nor was it joy. It was shock, profound and destabilizing, the kind that fractures certainty at its core. For a man who had built his life on legacy, lineage, and the careful stewardship of a name larger than himself, the revelation of a child hidden from him was both a wound and a reckoning. He grappled not only with the betrayal implicit in Quinn's secrecy, but with the haunting realization of time lost, of moments never lived, of a future that might have unfolded differently had he known the truth. The child's presence forced him to confront the limits of his control, the consequences of choices made when passion outweighed prudence. Donna's response was quieter but no less seismic. She had always understood that loving Eric meant coexisting with his past. But this revelation did not feel like the past. It felt like a living, breathing challenge to the present she believed they were building together. The child represented not merely Quinn's return, but the re-emergence of a history Donna had fought tirelessly to move beyond. She struggled to reconcile her compassion with her fear, her empathy with her insecurity. Watching Eric look at the child, seeing something soften and fracture within him simultaneously, ignited a terror she did not know how to name. It was not jealousy alone, but the dread of becoming irrelevant in a story that suddenly seemed larger than her. Ridge, however, felt the impact differently. For him, Quinn's return was not only personal but political. The Forrester empire was already under siege, strained by internal divisions and external threats, particularly the escalating conflict with the Logans. The appearance of an undisclosed heir threatened to destabilize everything he had fought to protect. Ridge had long positioned himself as the guardian of the Forrester legacy, the rightful steward of his father's vision. The idea that another child, unknown and untested, could suddenly be elevated to the center of that legacy felt like an attack on his identity as much as his authority. He did not see innocence when he looked at the child. He saw disruption. The family, as a whole, reacted with a mixture of disbelief, suspicion, and fear. Questions erupted beneath the surface, unspoken but omnipresent. Why now? Was this an act of vulnerability or strategy? Quinn did not rush to answer these questions. She allowed them to linger, understanding that uncertainty itself was a powerful tool. She had spent years observing from a distance, watching how alliances shifted, how loyalty bent under pressure, how power was wielded and withheld. She had not returned to beg for forgiveness or to reclaim a place at the table. She had returned to reshape the table entirely. Despite their tumultuous past, Quinn and Eric found themselves drawn into an unexpected alignment. Their history was layered with betrayal, passion, manipulation, and regret, yet beneath it all remained a connection forged not merely by desire, but by shared ambition and mutual recognition. They understood each other in ways others could not. Faced with the undeniable reality of their child, old grievances became temporarily irrelevant. What mattered now was protection, position, and the future. Eric, whose authority had been quietly eroded over time, saw in this child not only a second chance at fatherhood, but a means of reclaiming influence within the company he had built. Quinn saw opportunity where others saw scandal. Together, they recognized that unity, however fragile, could be transformative. Their alliance was not born of romance but of purpose. They agreed, implicitly and explicitly, that the child deserved more than anonymity and more than token acknowledgement. In their eyes, this was not merely a Forrester by blood, but a rightful heir whose existence challenged the current hierarchy. Eric began to reassert himself, invoking his status as founder and patriarch, reminding the board and his family that legacy was not a static inheritance but a living continuum. Quinn, ever strategic, leveraged her social influence, quietly re-establishing connections, shaping narratives, and reframing the child's existence as a symbol of continuity rather than disruption. Legal avenues soon followed. Trusts were discussed, documents reviewed, precedents examined. Eric's legal team explored pathways that would secure the child's position within the Forrester lineage, not as an afterthought, but as a central figure. Quinn ensured that every move was calculated to withstand scrutiny, understanding that Ridge and his allies would resist fiercely. This was not simply a fight for recognition. It was a battle for the future of the Forrester Empire itself. Ridge responded with open defiance. He challenged the legitimacy of Quinn's claims, questioned her motives, and warned of the chaos such a shift would unleash. He framed the situation as reckless, irresponsible, and dangerously destabilizing. Yet beneath his arguments lay fear, raw and unyielding. The possibility of losing control, of watching the legacy he believed he embodied slip through his fingers, haunted him. He was no longer simply defending the company. He was defending his place within it. Donna found herself caught between empathy and alarm. She could not deny the child's innocence, nor could she ignore the implications of Eric's renewed assertiveness. The alliance between Eric and Quinn unsettled her deeply, resurrecting insecurities she had long buried. She watched as Eric's focus shifted, as his priorities recalibrated around a future that suddenly included someone she had never anticipated. Love, she realized, was not always enough to protect against change. As pressure mounted, the boardroom became a battlefield of quiet power plays and strategic posturing. Quinn's presence was felt even when she was not physically there, her influence rippling through conversations, decisions, and alliances. Eric spoke with renewed conviction, invoking the founding principles of the company and his right to define its future. Ridge countered with arguments of stability and continuity, positioning himself as the safeguard against upheaval. The child, unaware of the war being waged on their behalf, became its silent center. What made the situation truly volatile was not the existence of the child, but what that existence symbolized. It challenged the notion that the past could be contained, that secrets could remain buried without consequence. It exposed the fragility of power structures built on selective truth. Quinn understood this better than anyone. She had lived in the margins long enough to know that disruption was often the only path to transformation. As Los Angeles buzzed with speculation and the Logan Forrester conflict reached new heights of intensity, one truth became impossible to ignore. Quinn's return had altered the trajectory of every life it touched. The child represented not only a new heir, but a reckoning, a reminder that legacy is never as controlled as those who wield it believe. In aligning herself with Eric, Quinn had not sought redemption. She had sought relevance, influence, and justice on her own terms. The war ahead would not be decided by sentiment alone. It would be fought in boardrooms, courtrooms, and the quiet spaces where loyalty is tested and fear reveals itself. And at the center of it all stood a child whose future had become the most powerful bargaining chip of them all, poised to redefine what it meant to be a Forrester in a world where the past refuses to stay buried. Is it finally time to say goodbye? That question has been echoing through the minds of countless fans of The Bold and the Beautiful, growing louder with every rumor, every leaked whisper, and every ominous turn in the storyline. At the center of the speculation stands Rebecca Budig, whose portrayal of Taylor Hayes has once again placed her at the intersection of narrative danger and contractual uncertainty. For a show built on passion, betrayal, and cyclical destruction, the possibility that her time may be nearing its end feels both inevitable and strangely unfinished. Industry murmurs suggest that Budig's contract with CBS could be approaching its expiration. In the world of daytime television, such timing is rarely coincidental. Contracts often end when storylines do. And storylines end most definitively when a character's life is placed in mortal jeopardy. The unsettling reality is that all signs now point toward a narrative collision that Taylor Hayes may not survive, at least not in the form audiences currently recognize. The tension is not merely about whether a character will live or die, but about what her potential exit would signify for the show, for its history, and for the actress who has carried the weight of an iconic role under intense scrutiny. Fueling this speculation is the growing menace surrounding Sheila Carter, a character whose very presence signals that boundaries will be crossed and bloodlines shattered. Leaked plot hints and narrative breadcrumbs suggest that Sheila is once again spiraling toward violence. Her obsession now fixated on Taylor. This time, however, the stakes feel different. The rumors imply not a near miss or a moment of theatrical threat, but a calculated intent to eliminate a rival permanently. For longtime viewers, this raises a chilling possibility that when Sheila strikes, she will not miss. The narrative logic driving this threat is rooted in transgression. As fans well know, Taylor has crossed lines both professionally and personally by allowing herself to grow close to Deacon Sharp, a man whose moral ambiguity and romantic entanglements have long invited chaos. Deacon's marriage to Sheila has never been stable, but Taylor's emotional proximity to him represents something Sheila cannot tolerate. In the twisted moral calculus of a woman like Sheila, desire becomes justification, and perceived betrayal becomes a death sentence. Taylor's feelings, regardless of intent or restraint, place her squarely in the crosshairs. What makes this potential tragedy resonate so deeply is the sense of inevitability that surrounds it. Fans have seen Sheila shoot before and fail before, her violence often deflected by chance or intervention. This time, however, the narrative whispers suggest finality. The implication is stark and unsettling. Taylor may pay the ultimate price simply for allowing herself to feel something forbidden. In the heightened morality of soap opera storytelling, such emotional vulnerability can be as dangerous as malice. Amid this narrative storm stands Rebecca Budig herself, a bold and undeniably beautiful presence whose return to the role of Taylor Hayes was met with immediate division. Stepping into the shoes of a character so deeply ingrained in the show's legacy is no small feat. Taylor is not merely a character. She is a symbol of restraint, intellect, and moral contrast, particularly in her long-standing dynamic with Brooke Logan. From the moment Budig assumed the role, she faced a barrage of criticism from viewers who felt she lacked the intensity, gravitas, or emotional sharpness they associated with Taylor. Some argued she was miscast, others that she could not plausibly stand toe-to-toe with characters as ferocious as Sheila or as enduring as Brooke. For Budig, this reception created a paradox. On one hand, she brought nuance, softness, and emotional intelligence to Taylor, reframing the character as a woman shaped by introspection rather than aggression. On the other hand, the audience's expectations, forged by decades of storytelling, demanded a version of Taylor capable of surviving a narrative ecosystem increasingly dominated by ruthless personalities. The criticism was not merely about performance, it was about identity. Was this Taylor strong enough for the world she inhabited? And if not, was her death the story's way of answering that question? From the perspective of some viewers, the possibility of Budig's departure brings an unexpected sense of relief. For them, this moment feels overdue, a long-anticipated turning point that promises to resolve their dissatisfaction with the current iteration of Taylor Hayes. Yet that relief is complicated by an uncomfortable truth. Removing Taylor from the canvas does not merely erase a performance. It reshapes the moral architecture of the show. Taylor has long represented a counterbalance to chaos, a reminder that not all conflicts need to be resolved through manipulation or violence. Her absence would leave a vacuum that cannot be easily filled. The larger question, then, is not simply what happens to Rebecca Budig, but what happens to Taylor Hayes as a legacy character. Taylor has been many things over the years: psychiatrist, mother, romantic rival, moral compass, and emotional anchor. She has died before and returned before, her existence shaped by the soap opera rule that death is rarely permanent. Coffins close, tears fall, and yet resurrection remains an ever-present possibility. In this genre, endings are rarely endings at all. They are pauses, transformations, invitations to reinvention. That is why the current speculation feels both heavy and strangely provisional. If Taylor is indeed shot, if Sheila's bullet finds its mark, the story may not conclude with a funeral but with a question mark. Will Taylor survive? Will she return later with a new face, a new perspective, or a darker edge forged by trauma? Or will this be a true farewell, a narrative decision aligned with contractual reality rather than dramatic convention? For Rebecca Budig, the uncertainty mirrors the experience of many actors in daytime television. Roles are both enduring and fragile, beloved and perpetually at risk. Her time in Los Angeles, both fictional and professional, may be nearing a turning point. Whether that turn leads to departure or transformation remains unknown. What is certain is that her portrayal of Taylor has sparked conversation, controversy, and emotional investment, an achievement in itself within a genre that thrives on reaction. As fans debate, speculate, and brace themselves for what comes next, one truth remains unchanged. In the world of the bold and the beautiful, nothing ever truly ends. Even when the final nail is driven into the coffin, History has taught viewers to expect the unexpected. Death may silence a character temporarily, but legacy has a way of resurfacing, reshaped but unbroken. Whether Rebecca Budig's journey as Taylor Hayes is concluding or merely evolving, the story is far from finished. And so, the question lingers in the air, unresolved and tantalizing. Is it time to say goodbye, or is this merely another chapter in a saga that refuses to let go? As always, the answer lies just ahead, waiting to unfold in a world where love is dangerous, enemies are relentless, and no one ever truly stays gone.
Oh.